Hey there, welcome back and welcome to this webinar. This is your instructor, AV, and I'm gonna be hosting this particular webinar for all of you guys on a topic that is network automation. I hope my voice is audible to all of you. If you could please confirm in the chat section, that will kind of be helpful to me. Perfect. So welcome to this webinar on network automation, which is being hosted by PyNet Labs Private Limited, as you all are aware about. And in this session, we're going to discuss about the very fundamentals of network automation, the recent certifications that have been introduced by Cisco, and we are also going to talk about a demonstration session that will kind of be conducted, which will give you a glimpse about how network automation can actually be deployed onto various network devices from just one of the Python scripts that we can use. So I welcome you all. Meanwhile, the candidates are still joining, but as the time already has begun for the webinar, so we'll start the session. So my screen is visible to all of you, as I believe, and there are certain topics that we're going to talk about. And yeah, PyNet Labs Private Limited is hosting this particular webinar for all of you. Now, if I talk about myself, my name is Vijit. You can see that on my screen there, and you can call me AB if that's hard to pronounce for some of you, as we have global audience joining in this particular webinar. So, if I talk about myself, then I belong to a state of Maharashtra from India, and I live in the state of New Delhi, and I've been in this corporate training industry since last around more than 8 years, and my key experiences in the field of networking is corely into the routing and switching domain, which is now enterprise network, and I also teach some of the core concepts about security, some of the core concepts about data center and service provider networks. And then, since there has been a biggest change into the world of Cisco certification, since then I have been delivering trainings in the field of network automation, and that kind of have created a lot of interest of mine. So I'm digging deeper and deeper in the concepts of network automation, and I'm just gonna share some of my knowledge or some of the very key interesting things that I know about network automation with you uh, in this particular session today. So without wasting much of a time, I would say that the webinar outline for today's session is about, we are going to talk about an introduction to SDN, which is software defined networking. Then we're going to get a view of networks as of today. And we are also going to talk about the evolution of network automation and why do we actually need to use Python. That's some of the key concepts that we are going to have in this particular session. Now, if we talk about the same, then before getting an introduction to SDN, you actually need to know about some of the recent changes that has been there in the Cisco certification. Now, if you look at Cisco certification, then there are almost 3 levels of certification that are out there, right? You have something called CCNA, you have something called CCNP, and you have something called CCIE. These are like level number 1, level number 2, and level number 3. And if we talk about level number 1, 2, and 3, then each of this particular level can actually be completed by giving certain exams into the Cisco's certification world. And you can achieve certifications in a way that there are various tracks that are available. So you can say tracks are available like routing and switching, you have security, you have data center, you have service provider, you have collaboration, you have various other things that are available there. Makes sense? So you could do CCNA in routing and switching, you can do CCNA in security, you could do CCNA in data center, and you could do almost like the associate professional and expert level courses in all the tracks that are available. But now if we talk about recent changes that have been there, just give me a minute. Yeah, so if we talk about the recent changes that have been made into the Cisco certification world, then the tracks no longer give you a glimpse about how you can do the certification for associate. So you can see that CCNA now is a complete different thing, which is Cisco Certified Network Associate. So Cisco have divided some of the things like something in associate course, something in professional, and something in the expert level certifications as well. So you can actually divide it in a way like this. So you have certain associate level course, then you have certain professional level course, and you have certain expert level course. If we talk about associate, then you just have CCNA. Okay, you have cyber ops associate, and you have DevNet associate, which is new line of which is completely a new line of certification that has been there. And if we talk about professional level, then you have CCNP. But this CCNP can then be done into, you can say, enterprise network. You can do CCNP in security. You can do CCNP in wireless, data center, and various other things that are out there, right? And then you can also do expert level certification like CCIE. Now, here's the thing. Cisco have introduced a complete new line of certification, okay, which goes for DevNet. And when we talk about DevNet, then the first line of certification you have is CCDA, Cisco Certified DevNet Associate. Then you have the second certification as CCDP. Sorry about that. Cisco Certified DevNet Professionals. Now, if we talk about these DevNet certifications, then usually you are gonna get a glimpse of what these DevNet certifications are and how does they actually work on. But most of these certificates, there is no CCI, like there is no expert level certification equivalent to CCI as of now in the field of DevNet. Okay, but when we talk about that, it's gonna come soon. Cisco is planning the content for the expert level certifications in DevNet. But when we talk about DevNet is all about something called network automation. Okay, it's all about network automation. Now, network automation is becoming so much popular in today's scenario that almost everyone is looking forward to pursue network automation, and every company wants to implement network automation in their you can say production network. Now, when we look at this particular perspective, then network automation usually, mostly people have a misconception that whenever network automation is going to be implemented, then that's going to eat up the jobs of a lot of people. Because if everything is going to be automated, then what would humans do? Because humans are, you can say, humans are basically going on to the production environments and they are configuring networks as is needed into the production environment. And if everything is going to be automated, then what would humans do? So this is, I would like to say, this is the biggest misconception that people are having who are doing daily network engineering jobs, because network automation is being thought of something that can actually automate your network, and it can reduce the number of repeated tasks that a human has to do on a daily basis. Assume it in a way that if you have a set of devices in your production environment, you have around 50, or you can say 100 routers, you have around 50 switches, you have around 10 firewalls, and you have around 5 load balancers and various other things. So if you have a network like this, and then there is a daily configuration that you need to do on these devices, it's kind of very, like, not feasible. It's kind of very bulky configuration that you actually need to do every day. So for this kind of scenario, there should be something called automation. And humans who are actually busy doing the repetitive task, they need to focus on the important thing that is out there, like optimization of network, like traffic shaping, like creating better SLAs to provide better customer service. Make sense? So when we talk about this scenario, that how networking is actually evolving in a way that everything is going to be automated, you need to get a glimpse, or you need to get an idea about how SDN was thought about. Okay, so if I give you a glimpse about that, we of course are going to come to this certification part back again. But if I want to give you a glimpse of how the thing actually works, assume it in a way. I'll give you a scenario over here. That assume it that there is a data center site, and you can think of it like this. This is basically a data center. Okay, and this data center has certain WAN edge devices. So you can say this is your R1 and this is your R2. And this R1 and R2 is basically connected to ISP network. And that ISP network is actually giving, you can say, the internet connectivity for the WAN edges. And then that ISP also is servicing to some of the remote branches that you have. Maybe this is B1 for branch 1, and then you have another branch called B2, and then this B2 again is connected with the same ISP, and then there is like bunch of network that is available there. There are so many users that are inside of this particular branch, and then there is some application that are being hosted into your data center, if that makes sense to you. So if we assume it like this, that you have a virtual machine server, or you can say VM server, which can be thought of an ESXi server. Okay, so this ESXi machine has certain virtual machines inside of it. It has VM number 1, VM number 2, VM number 3, and VM number 4. And these virtual machines are various services, be it HTTP service, be it FTP service, be it something else. And people which are situated over here, they actually want to access this particular data down over here. Makes sense? And these people also want to access this data down over here, but they cannot directly get an access like to that particular data over here. Makes sense what I'm talking about? So your data center network would be designed in a way that you should have security inside, which means there might be some firewalls. Let's say this is an ASA, this is another ASA, and the ASA is connected in a way in order to provide the uh, security to that particular traffic in a mesh fashion. Then there will also be some layer 3 switches that would actually give the connectivity to aggregate the traffic in a best way possible, like this. Okay, and then there will also be some layer 2 switches that will connect, or that would basically be connected with the ESXi server that you have here, and then you are connected with that particular device as well in a mesh fashion, which means that people that are sitting over here are going out on the internet. They cross this particular border, they pass the filtering test, they reach out to the layer 3, to the layer 2, and then to the VM if they want to access the thing. And same happens with over here as well. They go to the internet, they reach out to the edge router, then they reach out over here, and the A6 server. Make sense what I'm talking about? So by using this way, your WAN networks or your wide area networks are being connected in today's world, which we call as traditional network. Make sense? So in this kind of network, what's happening is if you are trying to access the services that are situated, there is bunch of configuration that actually needs to be do or needs to be done there. So what happens if there is another, you can say, what happens if there are a bunch of new virtual machines that are coming up, let's say 5, 6, and 7. And these 3 new virtual machines that are being installed into the data center, they also need to be accessible by the people that are situated into the branches. So what you need to do, you actually need to do something in a way that configure all these devices in order to support such kind of new deployment that is being given into your network. Because usually we have devices that are created by different vendors. You have different routers, you have different switches, you have different load balancers, firewalls, and various other things. And all these devices are created or manufactured by networking vendors, be it Cisco, be it Huawei, be it Palo Alto, be it FortiGate, be it Juniper, and various others. So, if you want to access a device, for example, if this is a router, that router can be accessible by a management PC, which means you can actually connect with that particular router by using CLI, or you can directly like connect with that particular device from a remote location. Okay, might be this is you, and you connect with that particular device by using either SSH or by using either telnet. And by using such control mechanisms or the abilities, you actually get to reach out to the R1. Makes sense? And then you do the necessary configuration. Now, in our scenario, as I told you, that whenever you want to reach out to the destination, which is actually your data center device, in that particular data center device, or in that particular data center environment, you need to reach out to some application that is deployed there. But this application is only reachable whenever a certain set of configuration will be deployed onto the device. Make sense? Now, as the new virtual machines are being deployed, you can say that your branch office or your branch network needs to be allowed via this firewall and the routing configuration. So when there are new set of applications or when there are new set of configuration that actually need to be done, then in that particular case, you can say that in that scenario, you can say the configuration actually needs to be deployed in a way. There are new VLANs that needs to be added, right? There are subnetting that needs to be actually done. There is, you can say, STP calculations that actually needs to be done. There is some other set of configuration that actually needs to be done. There is firewall, there is load balancing. Various other set of configuration actually needs to be done in such kind of scenario whenever there is any new thing that is actually being deployed. Make sense? Now, in that particular scenario, whenever you look in a way that all these configurations will actually be done on different devices. For example, VLAN creation and all the other configuration will be done on these switches. Okay, layer 2, layer 3 ether channels, okay, will be created on these two layer 3 switches. Then ASA and firewalling will actually be done onto this particular devices. Okay, like filtering and ACL creation and all the other things. And the best possible routing will actually be done onto the devices that are there. So which means that if there is any small change into your data center environment, or if there is any new application that is being deployed there, for achieving that particular scenario, you need to actually make routing possible. You need to make VLAN configuration possible. You need to make several other things possible by configuring it on each and every device that is there. And such kind of method is actually called as traditional method or traditional WAN deployment, which is slow and which is manual. And that is what limiting today's network environment to be configured with automation. Because if we talk about it in a better way, or in a best way possible, that how this can actually be imagined, why it is not that good, then let me give you a scenario. If you understand the thing in a pretty clear way, then you must be knowing that if we take any device, let's say you have, for example, a router, okay? That router contains multiple components, and those components are named as management plane. Those components are, you can say, called as control plane, and the other component is called as data plane. Now, if you understand all of these planes, then every device divides each and every task that actually the device needs to do in a different way possible. Okay, and when we look at the perspective of each and every like responsibilities of these planes, then management plane is actually able or is actually responsible for allowing you to configure that device with the help of either CLI, with the help of either GUI or something else. Okay, then after that, you can say that control plane is actually responsible for allowing you to take forwarding decisions. So when we look at a device, or when we look at a perspective of how a control plane would behave, you can imagine the control plane in a way that, for example, this is the control plane of a device, and this control plane actually contains multiple routing protocols are being executed on the router. You can say that there is OSPF running, okay? Then you can say there is EIGRP running, and then there is a static routing that is actually also being executed. So in these routing protocols actually create certain tables. It creates network neighbor table, it creates database table. Then also it creates neighbor table again, and it also creates database table. Oh, sorry, you can say topology table. And then based on the information that is available into the database table or topology table, the router is going to create something called RIB, which is called as routing table. And the best route from the database table or topology table is going to be inserted into this routing table. And then static route doesn't create any table, it directly injects the data or the routes inside the routing table. And then this information is also going to be communicated to something called ARP table in order to find out where the hosts are actually located there. Make sense? Now, when we talk about these scenarios, you can get to know that the information, whatever information is created or whatever calculations are created by control plane, that information is actually given to something called data plane, because data plane doesn't contain much of a data or doesn't contain much of an information, but it contains something called forwarding information base, FIB. And FIB is just a copy of routing information base. So the data plane actually of a device takes the decisions how the traffic actually needs to be forwarded. For example, this is a traffic that says FA0/1 and that says FA0/2. Whenever a traffic is coming up, then in that particular traffic, you can say that the packets are coming up this way and they are going to go out on this way. In that particular scenario, then your forwarding information base is going to have a copy of the routing table, and then whenever traffic comes up, it's going to look into the forwarding information base and take the decision of that in which actually in which direction or on which interface the traffic actually needs to be forwarded. So when such kind of data is being considered, then the control plane is local on every device that is available, which means for the same reason, you actually need to configure the like routing and switching and for firewalling and filtering on every device that is there. And for the same, you can say reason, the traditional approach is slow and manual, because every device in traditional network has a local control plane and has a local data plane. And that is why we are lacking in a way how the today's networks are actually created. And for the same reason, we are going to move towards automation. Now, what does automation does? When we talk about like automation, because when we talked about networks that are as of today, according to the scenario over here, if we talk about automation or how network automation is going to help you to achieve that particular thing, then you can think of it in a way that you have certain devices. You have R1, then you have R2, then you have R3, and you have various other switches as well. Okay, and if you connect all of these devices together, or not even if you avoid these connections, yeah, and then let's say there is a cloud, or there is another switch there, and then there is a management PC. So it doesn't matter how many devices are there inside your organization. This is your organization. Then what you can do, you can have your Python, or you can have your third party applications like Postman or various other things. You can assume these things as called as SDN controller. And this SDN controller is responsible for managing the control plane, which means instead of these devices having the control plane and data plane locally situated there, control plane, data plane, control plane, data plane, control plane, data plane, everything is there, right? But if we look at a scenario over here, then in this scenario, you can say the devices are just going to have the data planes with them. Data plane, data plane, data plane, data plane, and data plane. And all of these devices can actually be configured by the SDN controller, which actually manages the control plane of all the devices that are there, which means the control plane is now a centralized entity and it does not reside onto the local device that is available there. Make sense to you? Which means that you do not actually need to be worried about how many devices or about how many devices are connected inside your network, or how are you going to reach out to each and every device. You just need to make sure that the connectivity is there, and apart from that, the configuration can actually be done from a centralized point of touch. Make sense? And Python is actually becoming a major tool in order to deploy, you can say, network automation on that scenario. Now, how we have a look into it is because now why Python? Because Python kind of gives you an ability in order to, you can say, so Python is a language because there are various other languages that are available. There is, you can say, there is C programming that was there is C++, there is C sharp, there is Java, right? There is Perl, there is curl, and then various other languages that are available. But all these languages are not that considered in order to deploy network automation as Python is considered. Okay. So when we talk about Python, Python is the easiest language to learn that is available today. It has very low entry to barrier. Okay. There are various other versions. You have Python 2 and you have Python 3. And these Python 2 and Python 3 supports something called community libraries. So when we talk about community libraries, it means that, for example, let's say that you have a deployment scenario where you have a bunch of devices, R1, R2. Let's assume these two are the devices. And then you can access those devices from this management PC. And on that management PC, you have Python that is installed. And you are now looking forward to create an telnet connection with all these devices, or you can say SSH connection with all these devices, and use your CLI commands to be deployed onto those devices. So there are different libraries that are available, which we call as community libraries, because Python has a huge, you can say, user base and developer base, and it's an open source, like you can say, coding language. That's why there are so many people that actually creates libraries, that actually creates modules and various other things, so that the other user who are actually using these libraries can actually talk about it and use those libraries in order to implement it in the production environment. So if you want to create a Python script that actually lets you connect with the devices by using SSH or by using Telnet or something else, then you don't need to write the entire code of how the SSH or Telnet connection is going to be created, which you need to do majorly onto all the other programming languages that you have. You get that? So Python kind of allows you to make use of the pre-existing script or pre-existing library, and it makes your thing easier. You get that? And be it any other networking network automation protocols that you're gonna use, there is a library that is available for every operation that you can do. So in this particular section, we are going to learn about the fundamentals of Python. We are going to talk about why Python needs to be used. I'm going to teach you the basics of Python. Okay, and I'm also going to make you familiar with how to create your own Python script in order to automate your network. Okay, and there doesn't like there is no need for you to know about any pre-existing coding like background. If you have never tried coding, I believe most of you have tried it in the engineering days or in the qualificational days of yours. But yeah, if you even have never tried out programming, it's still gonna be easy, because coding in Python is just like writing an essay. Okay, it's just like writing some of the command lines that actually look like English language lines, and that's gonna help you automate your network. Okay, that's why we're gonna use Python, because it's the easiest way to implement most of the possibilities that you can do with the help of network automation. Okay, now how do you actually implement it? And for the same for the same information, what we are going to do is I'm going to give you a short demo. I'm going to give you a demonstration on how you can implement network automation. So be there. Let me share my other screen with you all, and let's see how that's gonna, you can say, help you in order to implement network automation. So just give me a minute, let me share my other screen, and that will kind of make this particular thing more interesting. So I'm gonna start up with the demonstration now. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have an Eve NG machine in which I have deployed a couple of devices there, and we're gonna have a common network there for our communication. And let's see, I'll start up my Eve NG, and inside of that, while it starts up, yeah, so it's 192.168.240.3, okay? 192.168.240.3. There you go. And there you go. So we have basically a topology in which what I'm gonna do is I have this cloud appliance here, and I'm gonna grab a couple of routers for us, which is 3725. I'll grab 3 of them, and then I'm gonna give some Ethernet slots to them and save it. And now you can see we have router 1, we have router 2, and we have router 3. So these routers are actually going to be connected with the devices over here. There you go. There you go. And there you go. And when I start this particular device, what we are going to do is we are going to configure multiple devices by using a Python script. Okay, so we already have a Python script ready for us, which we are going to use. But before that, as we have the access of these devices, I'm going to configure SSH on these devices, and I'm going to make sure that my physical machine communicates with these devices. So we have our first device, we have a second device ready, and our third device ready. I'm going to go on to the first device. I'm going to say no, and I'm going to do the basic configuration that we actually need to do here. So when we say enable conf hostname R1, okay, and then I'm going to go to interface at A0/0, no shutdown, and IP address DHCP, which means I'm going to grab an IP address onto the FA0/0 interface of our device, which is a gigabit, which is basically 3725. And I'm gonna basically be able to communicate with that device from my physical machine. And I'm gonna do the same thing on second router as well, and third router as well.
So as you can see now that the IP address has been assigned, which is 172.16.201.136. If I copy that particular address, and if I go to my terminal of my machine, you can say, let me open up terminal. There you go. And I can actually ping, I can actually ping to that particular address there. 172. Then we have 16.201.136. 201.36. And then if I try to ping it, okay. 16.201. Okay, that's 136. There you go. So you can actually reach out to the device, okay, by using this EVE simulation. And now, as we have our device configured, I'm going to create some, you can say, authentication parameters. I'm going to say username admin privilege 15, password Cisco, and then I'm going to give a domain name of pynet.com. And then I'm going to create a crypto key generate RSA. And with the size of 1024, that actually enables SSH on our device. And then I'm going to say IP SSH version 2. And then line VTY 0 space 4, login local, transport, input all. Right? This is the same configuration that we're going to do onto the R2 and R3 so that we have the SSH configured on that particular device. So once our device comes up, then I'm gonna do the same configuration. There you go. The device is coming up. Yeah. Say enable conf hostname R2 interface FA0/0. No shutdown. And then IP address DHCP. And it will get an IP address in a minute or in just a couple of seconds there. There you go. It has received an IP address of 137 in the same series. Then I'm going to go and say username, admin, privilege 15, password Cisco, and then you can say line VTY, or you can say IP domain hyphen name abc.com. And then after that, crypto key generate RSA 1024 and good. Then you can say IP SSH version 2 and then login or line VTY 0 space 4, login local and transport input on. That's how the configuration can be done on the second device, and same would be followed onto the third device as well. So I say no. And then I can say enable config interface FA0/0. No shutdown. IP address DHCP, and then host name R3, and then IP domain hyphen name abc.com, let's say, or let's say pynet.com, and then you say username admin privilege 15, password Cisco, and then after that you can say crypto key generate RSA 1024, and then IP SSH version 2, login, or you can say line VTY 0 space 4, login local, transport input on. And that's all. That's all the configuration that we actually had to do. I'll check the reachability to all the three routers from my device. We already have ping to 136, then 137 reachable, and then if we check it via 138, you can also see that. Makes sense. So that's how the thing will be. Now, apart from that, we have a Python script that is saved on my display here, if you can see that, which is ssh underscore multiple.py. So I'm going to open that particular script in my, you can say, VS Code, which is the IDE that we're gonna use, and I'll open up my VS Code and I'm gonna say file and then open, and I'm gonna go to my desktop and I'm gonna open this Python script that we have, which is that ssh underscore multiple dot py. Now what you can see over here is in the Python, I have created a script that actually imports a NetMiko library that helps you in order to connect with a networking device by using SSH. And then I have created a couple of dictionaries here. Now, whatever I have typed here, this all needs to be described to you guys in order to understand that how a Python script is manufactured or created. And over here, I have three dictionaries, R1, R2, and R3. And these three dictionaries basically contains various other like device type, IP address, username, and password information for every device that you have. We just need to replace the IP address. So over here, as you have the first IP address as 192.16.201.36, oh sorry, 136. I'm gonna paste that over here in my script, and then I'm gonna copy the same, and I'm gonna paste it for the R2's information there, replacing 136 with 137. And then I'm gonna paste it for R38, replacing 136 with 138. And that's all the device that we have. After specifying it, I'm gonna, you can say, create a list in which I will store all of the devices. And then by creating a for loop, I'm going to connect with all the devices one by one inside of this for loop, and then deploy the configuration for creating a loopback interface 10 with the IP address 10.1.1.1 and the description of configured by AB. And when I have this particular thing executed, then as a result, all of my device will have an IP address with a loopback, like a loopback with an IP address configured on it. And as of now, I would like to show you, do show IP interface brief doesn't have any loopback address on either on R1 or on R2, or it doesn't also have any IP address configured on R3 as well. So if I say that here as well, there you go. It doesn't have any of that particular information configured there. So when I execute this particular script, that script is going to go on every router one by one, and it's going to configure the loopback interface along with the IP and description information mentioned there. Okay. So I already have Python installed in my system, and you can see it over here that my VS Code is using Python 2.7 for executing this particular script. So when I say that run this particular Python file in terminal, then you can see that it's, there you go. It started executing. It says attempting SSH connection with this IP address, SSH connection established, configuration done. And that's the output of show IP interface brief. You can see loopback 10 has been created. Then after that, it went on to the second router and then deployed the configuration, and you can see it's there. And then now it's going on to the third router. Okay, SSH connection established, and you can see it that the loopback interface is connected. Makes sense? So our single script went on every device one by one, and it deployed the configuration onto each and every Python device that's available there. Makes sense? And I'll verify the same by going on to the CLI so that you guys can cross check that this over here, do show IP interface brief. There you go. There's a loopback 10 that has been created. And if I say do show run, I will also show you the loopback interface with the description configured by AB. And same thing can be verified on the second router by saying do show IP interface brief. And there you go. Loopback 10 has been created over here as well onto the second router. And if I go on R3, you can check do show IP interface brief. That's what you can see there. Makes sense? So this is what the magic is. Okay, you can actually make the use of Python script in a pretty scalable way possible, and doesn't matter how many devices you have, you can actually create a Python script in order to deploy configuration on various devices possible. Also over here, I've just created a script that actually deploys same type of configuration onto multiple devices. We are also going to create multiple type of configuration in a way that the configuration for every device can also be different. Okay, you can pass arguments, and there are n number of possibilities that you can have inside your Python script. Make sense? So when we actually talk about this, then as Cisco have started advertising the network, or you can say as Cisco have started advertising their certifications, if you look at that, which is DevNet Associate. If we look at these courses as DevNet Associate, then the DevNet Associate course actually is created in a way that it enables you to understand how network automation can actually be done. But if you look at the curriculum, then it doesn't actually gives you the ability to learn about basic of Python inside of that. Okay, so if I show you a curriculum or an exam blueprint of that, which has 200,901, which is the exam code of that DevNet. There you go, 200,901. And you can see it over here that the exam topic for the DevNet Associate. And I'm opening that. There you go. Software development and design, understanding and using API, Cisco platforms and development, application deployment and security, and infrastructure and automation, and even network fundamentals. So these are the sections that are actually covered into the official DevNet training. Now, I have been teaching network automation since last 2 years. Okay, ever since like Cisco came up with the announcement of they going into the network automation field. So I catched up with the content, and I've been delivering these courses from last 2 years. And what I've observed is covering the fundamentals of Python is pretty necessary whenever anyone goes into network automation. And people who are already working in the field of network engineering, or they know about CCNA and CCNP and how networks actually work, be it in security, data center, or service provider networks, they actually need to learn about the basics of Python so that they can implement their skills in a better way possible. Because the networks are getting so much of complex nowadays. So that's why we have came up with a course with something called, you can get the details of that particular course by going into na.pynetlabs.com. And when you go onto this particular website, you will actually get to know about the network Python for network engineers. Plus, we have combined that Python for network engineers course with the DevNet course. So when we actually talk about this course, we have not limited this particular course to only Cisco, which means we are gonna deploy the configuration. You also have an option to choose a course that actually trains you in order to deploy configuration on not only Cisco's devices, but also on Juniper, but also on Palo Alto, also on Juniper, and various other devices that you have, okay, including Arista, Huawei, and all. So what we have come up with is this network automation training for multi-vendor, okay, along with the 100% content of DevNet Associate course. So whenever you plan for something like for exam perspective in the future, then you already have taken a course that actually covers all the content that is covered into the exam of DevNet Associate as well. So that's how we are coming up with. You can just hover yourself or navigate yourself to na.pynetlabs.com, and you can get to know about all the course details, including our batch timings as well. Okay, there are different batches that we have planned, both for weekdays and for weekends, and you can choose any batch according to your geographical time zone and according to your professional commitments as well. The total duration of this particular course is going to be 60 hours. Okay, and that will be divided accordingly, whatever batch that you choose. Every day we're going to sit for some hours, and then in that particular class I'm going to teach you how you can say learn about the basics of Python and how you can actually contribute into the field of network automation. And then after that, I'm gonna, you can say, demonstrate to you some of the labs, and then I give specific time for you in order to practice the lab, and I sit there for solving your doubts and help you troubleshoot whenever you run in a problem. Okay, so that's how our scenarios is. The course is completely going to be lab oriented, and I'm going to help you install local lab setups onto your PCs. Okay, so that you can, even after the course is done, you can practice by looking at the recorded videos because you're going to have lifetime recorded sessions with you over there. Okay, so that's how we have planned this particular thing for you. And that's how interesting it can be. By hovering onto that particular same page over there, you can also get to know about my details, my certifications, my clients, wherever I have delivered trainings, and also the practicals that are going to be covered in this particular course. And you can download the course content. You can also watch some of my previous sessions that I have covered or that I have took. The link for the same is given over there. Okay, and that will kind of be helpful for you to, you can say, understand or identify whether your investment or whether you spending time with me will be helpful for you or not. Make sense? So that's how we have or that's why we have basically planned this particular webinar for all of you guys, so that you can get to know about the glimpse of how the training is actually going to be and how network automation is currently in trend with you all. Sounds good? So I believe that was basically all that we had to cover in this particular training. And I'd like to take any questions that you have inside the chat section. Please don't hesitate to ask your question. And for the next 2 or 3 or 5 minutes, I can answer your questions if you have any. However, the Panshu is there answering the questions for you guys. But yeah, you can you can ask your questions to me as well if there are any technical questions. So please go ahead, ask your questions, and I'll be here to answer your you can say
So Abhijit,
questions.
there was, yeah, thanks Abhijit. So there was one question that a couple of people have asked us. So it is like, can you share the Python code that you used in the, while you were running the command? Like, can you share it after the this particular session? Can you share it in the chat, or can I email them later?
I am just putting that particular code into the chat.
Wow, that's great. That's great. So generous, man. Thank you. So I think
That particular.
yeah, so there were a couple of people who wanted that. Guys, please copy this code if you want, or else I'll also email it to you. Don't worry. Okay. So I think that was the only question that came, and then it was ebooks. Yes, ebooks will be provided, recordings will be provided. Yes, everything is there. Fine. Yeah. So I think Shiva Chandran is very happy right now. He was looking for it. Anyways, so I feel everything else is fine, Abhijit. I don't think there are any more questions. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
All right. Guys, if you have anything, if you want to ask anything, please mention it there. So Abhijit, we have a question now. I don't have any knowledge on firewalls. Will there be any challenges? Abhijit?
No, there won't be any challenges. Whatever knowledge that you will require for that, only routing, basic routing and switching knowledge is required over here, so that you can understand how it can actually be done. So nothing to worry if you don't have any knowledge of firewall. That's all fine.
Great, great. So Shagri, I hope that answers your question. So anyone else who has, can I get direct contact details? Yes, I can be these. I'm just typing my number. So I'm also available on WhatsApp, Viber, Telegram, whichever mode you want. So I'm available on this number with the same. You can always text me, call me, anything, no problem. Great. Is there anything else we can help you with, guys? You can always ask us now, or maybe you can always ask us later as well.
How long will it take for me to rest myself with the training before arriving the Cisco service? Yeah, that actually depends on your understanding. So we are going to cover everything over here. And I'll suggest you to take a time of a month to practice everything that we're going to cover in this particular training. And then you can write the exam by yourself. You should be pretty good because I'm going to provide all the course materials and I'm going to provide everything that you're going to need in order to write an exam. So you can give your time reading the study material that you're going to get, or even the recorded session that you're going to get after the training, and that should help you to write the exam.
Abhijit, there is one more question from Prince Olive. Please check that.
You do require a virtual machine. Yeah, you can say you require a local PC, friends, and that particular PC should be able to install VMware Workstation inside of that. So that we are going to use in order to do all the labs. So that's, yeah.
So yeah, Margie is saying she.
If you do not have any knowledge on Python, that's completely fine. I'm going to cover everything from the scratch. That's fine, friends. You can have a MacBook Pro, and I can help you install VMware Workstation.
Even Abhijit is using MacBook Pro only, so need to worry about it. Can you cover the configurations to be done through APIs? Abhijit?
Yeah, we are going to cover the configurations of REST API. We're going to cover the configurations of RESTconf and NetConf as well. So all the automation protocols are going to be covered there. You can go check out the, you can say, the entire course content that includes a list of labs that we're going to do as well. You can see it on my screen as well. So over there you have a lab that we are going to perform against deploy security configuration on Palo Alto using REST API, perform configuration change on Arista using API, ASA using API, okay, and other devices as well by using RESTconf API, NetConf API. That's fine if the RAM is 8 GB, okay. Even if you have an 8 GB RAM, then everything is gonna be same for you, okay. You can still practice the labs on your devices.
And there's another question from Farooq. What software to install for Python?
Well, we're gonna use IDEs. So IDEs means integrated development environments. We just need a Python, and then we need Microsoft Visual Studio Code in which we can write a code. That's a couple of software that we're gonna use.
Great. I think all the questions have been answered perfectly. Guys, if you have any more questions, you can always ask us. I mean, or WhatsApp us, email us, anything you want. Meanwhile, I'm sharing a direct WhatsApp link for you so that you can just click there and just ping me directly on WhatsApp. So that would help you. Yeah. Anything else you want to ask?
Prince, that covers the DevNet exam curriculum. So yeah.
Yes. So we'll have network automation combo with DevNet because we, like Abhijit said in the beginning, like in between as well, we'll be covering Python from basics and then moving on to DevNet certification. Perfect, great. All right, Abhijit, thank you so much. Thank you very, very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me
so
on
much. Yeah, sure. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks. You've been a great audience, and I'm looking forward to see you guys aboard on the training. So have a good time ahead. Take care of yourself. I'll see you guys there in the training. Thanks, Dipanshu. Thanks. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye,
Thank
everyone.
You. See you.